My husband abandoned me at a camping site. He wanted to show me that I am dependent on him, but the aroma of burnt marshmallows lingered in the air as I sat alone by our dying campfire. The orange embers pulsed like a fading heartbeat against the gathering darkness. My husband Tyler's laughter echoed from somewhere down the hiking trail, growing fainter with each passing second. Beside me lay his hastily scribbled note. "Getting tired of your complaining. The guys and I are heading to Riverside Campground for some real fun. Call when you're ready to act like a good sport." I stared at his handwriting until the words blurred. 6 years of marriage. And this was what it had come to, being abandoned at Pinecrest Wilderness Retreat with nothing but our 2-person tent, my backpack, and enough food for maybe 2 days. Tyler had taken the car keys, most of our supplies, and even my phone charger. My phone battery showed 18%, barely enough for an emergency call, let alone the groveling session he clearly expected. This camping trip was supposed to fix things between us. That's what Tyler had said when he suggested it 3 weeks ago during one of our increasingly frequent arguments. "We need to reconnect. Maya, get back to basics." What he hadn't mentioned was that his 3 college buddies would be joining us, turning what I thought would be a romantic getaway into yet another boys' trip where I was merely tolerated. The butt of their jokes, expected to cook and clean while they drank and reminisced about their glory days. I should have known something was wrong when Tyler insisted on packing the car himself. "You'll just mess it up," he'd said with that condescending smile I'd grown to hate. "You don't understand the Tetris of camping gear." Now I realized he'd been strategically separating our supplies, making it easy to grab what he wanted and leave me with almost nothing. Night was falling fast in the Oregon wilderness, and I was completely alone at our campsite. I was angry, hurt, and though I hated to admit it, scared. But underneath all those emotions was something unexpected, a tiny flicker of relief. That first night alone was the hardest. Every snapping twig and rustling leaf made my heart race. I'd never been camping alone before. Tyler always made the decisions, set up the tent, built the fire. He liked to remind me of this. How helpless I was without him in the real world outside our Portland apartment. "City girl," he'd say with that condescending smile whenever I asked a question about camping gear or outdoor skills. "Just stick close to me and you'll be fine." But he wasn't here now, and despite the fear tightening my chest, I managed to add wood to the fire, keeping it burning through the night. I barely slept, huddled in our tent with my jacket clutched around me. As dawn broke, I took inventory of my situation. I had my personal backpack containing clothes for 3 days, basic toiletries, a water filter, my nearly dead phone, a paperback novel, and a small first aid kit. Tyler and his friends had taken most of our food, the cooking gear, and our shared supplies. I had 2 granola bars, an apple, and a bag of trail mix. The campground had running water and basic bathroom facilities, but the nearest town was 15 miles away. This wasn't the first time Tyler had taught me a lesson. Last year, he'd left me at a party when I wasn't social enough with his work colleagues, forcing me to call an Uber at 2 a.m. 6 months before that, he'd forgotten to pick me up after a dental procedure, leaving me to navigate public transportation while still groggy from anesthesia. Each time, he'd made me feel like it was my fault, that I'd somehow deserved the abandonment because I wasn't living up to his expectations. My first instinct was to call for help, but who would I call? My parents lived in Florida, and my once vibrant social circle had shrunk dramatically since marrying Tyler. He hadn't liked my college friends too opinionated, he said, and gradually, those relationships had withered from neglect. My coworkers at the marketing firm where I worked remotely might worry eventually, but I'd taken vacation days for this trip. I scrolled through my phone contacts, seeing so many names I hadn't spoken to in years. Tyler had made sure of that, subtly criticizing anyone I grew close to, questioning my loyalty if I spent too much time with others. I'd given up my weekly art class after he suggested the instructor was flirting with me, abandoned book club when he complained about the pretentious women there, stopped attending my cousin's holiday gatherings because he found them boring. As I sat staring at my pathetic breakfast of half a granola bar, trying to conserve what little food I had, I thought about the past 6 years. How had I become this person I remembered, the Maya who had graduated with honors, who had backpacked through Europe alone after college, who had given presentations to rooms full of executives without breaking a sweat? Now I second-guessed every decision, apologized constantly, and had developed the habit of making myself smaller physically and emotionally to avoid Tyler's irritation. "Excuse me," a voice called from nearby, startling me from my thoughts. "Is this campsite number 14? I looked up to see a woman about my age with curly black hair pulled into a messy bun, wearing hiking boots and cargo pants, a heavy backpack strapped to her shoulders. "Yes," I replied, suddenly aware of my unwashed face and rumpled clothes. "But I have it reserved for 2 more nights." She consulted a piece of paper. "That's weird. The ranger station assigned it to me starting today. The reservation system must have glitched." "Oh." I felt tears threatening. This was the final straw. Now I'd be forced to pack up and leave with nowhere to go. The woman must have noticed my distress because her expression softened. "Hey, no worries. I can check with the ranger station again. I'm Diana, by the way." "Maya," I said, then found myself blurting out, "My husband and his friends left yesterday. They took the car and most of our camping gear." Diana's eyebrows shot up. "They left you here alone on purpose." I nodded, embarrassed by how pathetic my situation sounded when spoken aloud. "That's not just awful, that's dangerous," she said, dropping her backpack. "Do you have food, water, emergency supplies?" "Not much," I admitted. Diana's face darkened. "I have some choice words for your husband that would make a sailor blush." She seemed to make a decision. "Look, I was planning to camp alone, but there's plenty of room for both of us. The reservation mix-up is clearly a sign from the camping gods." "I couldn't impose." "It's not imposing when I'm offering," Diana said firmly. "Besides, I'm meeting friends tomorrow who are hiking the Pacific Crest Trail. Safety in numbers, right?" Her easy kindness broke something in me. Tears spilled down my cheeks as 6 years of pent-up emotions suddenly found release. Diana didn't seem bothered by my breakdown. She simply handed me a clean bandana from her pack and waited. "I'm sorry," I finally said, wiping my eyes. "Don't apologize," she replied. "From what I can tell, you're not the one who should be sorry right now." Later, as Diana helped me organize my meager supplies, she asked about the reservation situation. "Did your husband cancel your booking when he left?" I hadn't considered this possibility, but it made sense. Tyler was vindictive enough to ensure I'd be forced to leave even if I wanted to stay. Diana offered me her satellite phone to call the ranger station. Sure enough, our 3-night reservation had been changed to a single night ending that morning. Tyler had called it in yesterday afternoon, claiming family emergency. "That manipulative jerk," Diana muttered. "He really thought of everything to make you uncomfortable enough to beg him to come back." That evening, Diana and I shared a meal of dehydrated beef stew that tasted better than any restaurant food I could remember. She showed me how to properly build a fire, explaining techniques she'd learned during her years as a wilderness guide. "I lead trips for teenagers now," she explained, adding small twigs to our growing flame. "Teaching them self-reliance, confidence, all that good stuff." "That sounds amazing," I said, genuinely envious of her independence. "It has its moments," Diana grinned. "What about you? What do you do when you're not being abandoned in the wilderness?" I told her about my job creating digital marketing campaigns, how I'd once loved the creativity of it but now worked mostly on autopilot. "Tyler thinks it's just a cute hobby," I admitted. "He says I'd quit once we have kids anyway, so why invest too much energy in it?" Diana's expression was carefully neutral. "And is that what you want, kids? Being a stay-at-home mom?" The question caught me off guard. No one had asked what I wanted in so long. "I used to think I wanted children," I said slowly. "But lately I've been wondering if I just convinced myself of that because it's what Tyler expects." We talked late into the night, and I found myself sharing things I hadn't told anyone in years. How Tyler criticized my appearance, monitored my spending, checked my phone, how he'd systematically isolated me from friends who didn't respect our marriage, how I'd stopped painting, a passion since childhood, because he complained about the mess and expense. "Once," I confessed. He threw away an entire set of watercolors my parents had given me for my birthday. Said they were cluttering the apartment when I got upset. He said I was being childish about a stupid hobby. Maya, Diana said quietly when I finally fell silent. That's not just being a jerk. That's emotional abuse. I flinched at the word. He's never hit me. Abuse isn't just physical. Everything you've described, the control, the isolation, the humiliation, it's textbook. I stared into the fire, watching the flames consume the wood. Part of me wanted to defend Tyler, to explain he had good qualities too, that he could be charming and generous when he wanted to be. But I was tired of making excuses for him. I think I've known for a while, I finally whispered. I just didn't know how to leave. Sometimes the universe gives us a push, Diana said, gesturing to the wilderness around us. Or in your case, a shove. That night, I slept better than I had in months, in a borrowed sleeping bag in Diana's spacious tent, the sound of her steady breathing strangely comforting. The next morning, Diana's friends arrived, Elena and Jackson, a married couple in their 30s who radiated the easy comfort of people secure in themselves and each other. They had been hiking sections of the Pacific Crest Trail for years and were full of stories that had us laughing around the morning campfire. When they heard my situation, their reaction mirrored Diana's outrage. He just left you here, Elena repeated, incredulous, and took the car. That's beyond messed up, Jackson added, handing me a mug of the coffee he'd brewed. That's potentially criminal. I hadn't thought of it that way. In my mind, I was the one at fault for complaining too much, for not being fun enough, for failing to appreciate Tyler's version of adventure. You should file a police report, Elena suggested, her background as an attorney showing. At minimum, he abandoned you in a potentially dangerous situation. The idea of taking such a step terrified me, but I didn't immediately reject it as I would have just days ago. Instead, I found myself considering it, weighing options, thinking like the independent woman I'd once been. That day transformed me. Elena loaned me clothes that actually fit the warm weather. Unlike the impractical outfits Tyler had insisted I pack, Jackson taught me how to cast a fishing line in the nearby stream, celebrating enthusiastically when I caught a small trout. Diana showed me how to identify edible plants, adding wild greens to our dinner. For the first time in years, I wasn't being judged, corrected, or belittled. I was learning, contributing, and feeling valued for simply being myself. The constant knot of anxiety in my chest began to loosen. After dinner, we sat around the campfire, and Elena pulled out a small sketchbook from her pack. I try to draw something every day of our hikes, she explained, showing me detailed sketches of landscapes, plants, and Jackson dozing against a tree. These are beautiful, I said, admiring her work. I used to paint, watercolors mostly. Used to? She asked. Why did you stop? The familiar excuses rose to my lips no time. Too messy, not practical, but instead, I told the truth. Tyler didn't see the point of it. He said I was mediocre at best, so why waste money on supplies? The silence around the campfire was heavy. Then Jackson spoke. That's like saying why bother watching the sunset if you're not a photographer. Some things you do because they feed your soul, not because you're planning to make money from them. His words struck something deep within me. When had I started measuring the value of my interests by Tyler's assessment? When had I surrendered the simple joy of creation to his judgment? Diana disappeared into her tent and returned with a small watercolor set and paper. I bring these for the teens who need quiet activities, she said, placing them beside me. They're yours if you want them. That night, as the others talked, I painted the campfire scene, the dancing flames, the silhouettes of my new friends, the stars scattered above like salt spilled across dark velvet. It wasn't a masterpiece, but it was mine, and creating it filled me with a quiet joy I had nearly forgotten. That night, a plan began to crystallize in my mind. Tyler had expected me to break down, to call him begging for rescue. He wanted me humiliated, dependent, grateful for his mercy. He'd used abandonment as a weapon, thinking I'd have no choice but to surrender. But what if, instead, I used this opportunity to reclaim my life? What if this abandonment became the foundation for my freedom? Late into the night, huddled in Diana's tent with a borrowed headlamp, I started documenting everything: Tyler's controlling behaviors, the isolation, the emotional manipulation, and now, this dangerous abandonment. Elena had shown me an app that survivors of domestic abuse use to safely record incidents, automatically timestamping and backing up to secure cloud storage. For the first time, I saw Tyler's actions through an objective lens, recognizing patterns I'd been too close to see. And I began to plan my response: not just an escape, but a deliberate reclaiming of my agency, my dignity, and my future. On the third day, Elena helped me draft emails to secure my most important accounts. Financial control is a common tactic, she explained as we used her satellite internet connection. We need to make sure you have access to your own money. I discovered Tyler had been monitoring my primary email account. There were hundreds of read messages I'd never opened. Using Diana's laptop, I created new accounts with complex passwords and enabled two-factor authentication. Next came finances. Tyler had insisted on joint accounts for transparency, but I'd maintained a small personal account from before our marriage that he didn't know about. It contained only a few $1,000s, but it was a start. You should temporarily move half of the joint funds, Elena advised. It's legally your money too, and you might need it before the divorce is finalized. The word divorce no longer frightened me. Instead, it felt like a doorway to freedom. When Jackson offered to drive me to the nearest town to file a police report about the abandonment, I accepted. The officer who took my statement seemed skeptical at first, just a marital spat. His expression suggested until I showed him Tyler's note and the evidence of the canceled campsite reservation. I'm not looking to press charges yet, I explained. I just want this documented in case his behavior escalates. The officer's demeanor changed as I spoke. He took detailed notes, provided me with a case number, and recommended I speak with a domestic violence advocate. This kind of thing often gets worse before it gets better, he warned. Having a record of the pattern can help protect you later. While in town, I used an ATM to transfer funds from our joint account to my personal one. I bought a new phone charger, basic supplies, and a prepaid phone as backup. Each action strengthened my resolve. That evening, Elena helped me draft emails to my closest former friends, explaining my situation without melodrama or self-pity. Within hours, supportive responses poured in: offers of places to stay, lawyer recommendations, and heartfelt apologies for not recognizing what was happening sooner. You're building your safety net, Diana said approvingly as I showed her the messages, the most important resource in any wilderness. On the fourth day, as we were hiking back from a nearby waterfall, I heard a familiar voice calling my name. Tyler stood at our campsite, his face a mix of anger and relief. His friends hung back, looking uncomfortable for once. Where the hell have you been? He demanded. I've been calling and texting for hours. I gestured to my dead phone. You took the charger, remember, along with most of our supplies and our only transportation. Tyler's expression darkened, recognizing the new tone in my voice. He switched tactics, his anger melting into concern for the benefit of the strangers beside me. Babe, we were so worried. The guys convinced me to come back early to check on you. He stepped forward as if to embrace me, but I stepped back. You were worried, I repeated flatly. So worried that you abandoned me at a campsite 15 miles from the nearest town, with minimal supplies and no transportation. Tyler's friends shifted uncomfortably. I realized they hadn't known the extent of what he'd done. He'd probably told them I had chosen to stay behind, that I had plenty of supplies, that I wasn't really alone. You know how you get, Maya, Tyler said with a nervous laugh. I figured you'd cool off, call me to pick you up when you were done being dramatic. Being dramatic, I echoed, aware of Diana, Elena, and Jackson standing protectively near me. Is that what you call it when I asked you and your friends not to get drunk and blast music until 3 a.m. in a family campground? Tyler's eyes narrowed as he assessed the situation, me standing tall, surrounded by people who clearly had my back, wearing borrowed clothes and a confidence he hadn't seen in years. Who are your new friends? He asked, voice dripping with insinuation. People who didn't abandon me in the wilderness, I replied simply. Diana stepped forward. I think Maya's made it clear she doesn't want to talk right now. You should go. Tyler's face flushed. This is between me and my wife, he snapped. Mind your own business. She became our business when we found her alone without adequate supplies, Elena interjected, her attorney persona in full force. Abandonment in a remote location could be considered reckless endangerment depending on the jurisdiction. Tyler's friends began backing toward their car. Dude, one called, let's just go, you can work this out later. But Tyler stood his ground, switching to the contrite husband act I knew so well. Maya, baby, I messed up. I was angry and stupid, but you know I love you. Let's not do this here, in front of strangers. Come home with me, and we'll sort everything out. 6 days ago, I would have accepted this non-apology. I would have blamed myself for provoking him, for embarrassing him in front of his friends by asking for basic courtesy. I would have gotten in the car and spent the next week walking on eggshells, trying to earn back his affection. But the woman who would have done that had been transformed by 4 days of kindness, respect, and self-rediscovery. No, I said, the word falling from my lips like a stone into still water. I'm not going anywhere with you. Don't be ridiculous. Tyler scoffed. Where will you go? How will you get there? Your car is at home, your credit cards are maxed out, and you've got 2 changes of clothes with you. His words were meant to remind me of my dependence, to scare me back into submission. Instead, they filled me with clarity. I'll figure it out, I said calmly. I always do. That's what you've counted on, isn't it? That I'll solve the problems you create, smooth things over, make excuses for you, not anymore. I pulled out my phone, fully charged now, and held it up. By the way, I filed a police report yesterday about your abandonment. Officer Martinez was very interested in your note. I've also documented the canceled reservation and how you took our transportation and essential supplies. Tyler's face paled. What are you talking about? I've also secured our finances, I continued. Half of our joint account has been transferred to an account you don't have access to. Don't worry, it's all legal and documented. I've learned a lot about financial abuse these past few days. Tyler's friends were now openly staring, their expressions a mix of shock and growing comprehension. Financial abuse, one repeated. Tyler, what the hell, man? She's exaggerating, Tyler said quickly. Maya has mental health issues. That's interesting, I interrupted. Because I've been keeping records of your gaslighting too. The time you hid my car keys, then told me I was too scattered to remember where I put them. The night you deleted that email about my promotion, then insisted I'd dreamed it. The birthday dinner with my parents that you claimed we'd never arranged. With each example, Tyler's friends edged further away from him, their expressions increasingly uncomfortable. I'm your husband, Tyler said, voice rising. You can't just… Actually, she can, Jackson interrupted, stepping forward. And if you don't leave now, I'll be happy to explain the concept of consent to you in more detail. Tyler looked from Jackson's imposing height to Diana's fierce glare to Elena's coolly professional assessment. He must have realized he was outmatched because he backed away. This isn't over, he warned me. You're making a scene for nothing. Call me when you're ready to be reasonable. I watched him storm off toward his waiting friends, slide into the driver's seat, and peel out of the campground in a spray of gravel. Are you okay? Diana asked when the dust had settled. I exhaled slowly. Yes, I said, surprised to find it was true. Actually, I think I'm better than I've been in a long time. That night, our last at the campsite, we celebrated around the fire. Elena and Jackson produced a bottle of wine they'd been saving for a special occasion. To Maya, Diana toasted. Who reminded us that sometimes the bravest thing isn't surviving in the wilderness, it's recognizing when a relationship has become toxic and having the courage to walk away. I felt tears prick my eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness or fear. They were tears of recognition of seeing myself clearly for the first time in years and liking the woman I found. Later, as the others slept, I sat alone by the fire, adding a final entry to the journal Diana had given me. Tyler thought abandoning me would break me, I wrote. Instead, it broke the spell he had cast over my life. In trying to punish me, he accidentally set me free. What Tyler never understood was that true revenge wouldn't come from a dramatic confrontation or public humiliation. It would come from systematically dismantling the control he'd established and building a life he couldn't touch, a life so full and authentic that his abandonment would eventually register as the gift it truly was. The day after we left the campsite, Diana drove me to Portland, not to the apartment I'd shared with Tyler, but to a women's resource center Elena had connected me with. There, I met with a domestic violence advocate who listened without judgment and helped me create a safety plan. Men like Tyler often escalate when they realize they're losing control, she warned. We need to make sure you're protected. With her guidance, I filed for an emergency restraining order based on the abandonment incident and documented pattern of emotional abuse. The judge granted it immediately, giving me court-ordered protection and exclusive use of our apartment for 30 days' time to gather my belongings safely. Diana accompanied me to the apartment while Tyler was at work. We systematically packed my personal items, important documents, and irreplaceable mementos. I left behind anything he had purchased, anything that held negative memories, anything that would give him reason to contact me. As we worked, my phone exploded with messages from Tyler. Alternating between rage and contrition, "You've lost your mind. I'm contacting your parents. Baby, please come home. I miss you. We can work this out. You stole money from our account. I'm calling the police. I'm sorry I left you at the campsite. I was just trying to teach you a lesson." Each message strengthened my resolve. I documented them all, forwarding the threatening ones to my lawyer. Yes, I had a lawyer now, a referral from Elena, who specialized in divorces involving emotional abuse. 2 days after leaving the campsite, I met with my boss to explain my situation and request remote work flexibility. To my surprise, she was immediately supportive. "You're one of our most valuable team members, Maya," she said. "We'll do whatever we can to help you through this transition." It was the first of many reminders that I wasn't the helpless, incompetent person Tyler had convinced me I was. 3 weeks after the camping trip, I sat across from Tyler in a mediation session, flanked by my attorney. Gone was the meek, apologetic Maya. In her place was a woman who understood her worth and had evidence to back her claims. "You've got nothing," Tyler sneered. "I left you at a campsite, so what? That's not abuse." My lawyer smiled thinly and opened a folder. "Actually, we have documented evidence of financial control, isolation, gaslighting, and now, reckless endangerment. We also have witness statements from the 3 people who found Mrs. Chambers abandoned without adequate supplies." She pushed a settlement proposal across the table. "You can make this easy or difficult, Mr. Chambers. But I should warn you, my client has been documenting your behavior for longer than you realize, and we're prepared to submit all of it to the court if necessary." Tyler's attorney, after reviewing the evidence, whispered urgently in his ear. The confidence drained from Tyler's face as he realized the bargaining power had shifted dramatically. The divorce was finalized 4 months later. I kept my retirement accounts, received half of our joint assets, and most importantly, secured my freedom without a protracted legal battle. Tyler's final attempt at control, demanding I take back my maiden name because I didn't deserve to be a Chambers anymore, backfired spectacularly when I readily agreed. Reclaiming my name felt like another step in reclaiming myself. It's been 6 months since that fateful camping trip. I'm writing this from the small apartment I now share with Diana, who had been looking for a roommate when we returned from Pinecrest. The divorce proceedings are complete, and Tyler has been legally barred from contacting me after repeated violations of the restraining order. With Elena's help, I found a lawyer who specializes in emotional abuse cases. She helped me document the patterns, the isolation, the financial control. Tyler's text messages about abandoning me at the campsite became valuable evidence. I expected to feel broken after leaving my marriage, but instead, I feel like I'm finally becoming whole again. I reconnected with old friends who welcomed me back without judgment. I joined a hiking group that meets on weekends. I submitted a portfolio to a creative agency and landed a new job with better pay and colleagues who value my input. My revenge against Tyler wasn't just leaving him, it was thriving without him. Last month, I was promoted to creative director at my new agency. a position I never would have pursued with Tyler undermining my confidence. My first major campaign won an industry award, my name prominently featured in the credits. Through mutual connections, I heard that Tyler had tried to date one of my former college friends, only to be coldly rejected when she learned the truth about our marriage. Apparently, word had spread about his behavior, shrinking his social circle considerably. His friends from the camping trip had distanced themselves after witnessing his true nature. The watercolor set Diana gave me now sits on a small desk by my bedroom window. I paint almost every day, sometimes just small studies of light and shadow. Other times, ambitious landscapes inspired by my new weekend hiking adventures. Last month, I sold 2 pieces at a local art fair. Tyler had once called my artistic ambitions cute but pointless. Now those pointless paintings were bringing me both joy and supplemental income. Perhaps the most satisfying revenge came unexpectedly. 3 months after our divorce, Tyler's company featured one of my agency's marketing campaigns. His boss insisted the entire team attend the presentation where I delivered a flawless pitch, my confidence and expertise on full display. Tyler sat in the back row, witnessing firsthand the professional success he'd insisted I would never achieve. He approached me afterward, attempting his old charm. "You look great, Maya. We should catch up sometime." "I'm afraid that won't be possible," I replied. Gesturing to my legal advocate, who stood nearby, a provision of our settlement agreement required supervision for any professional contact. "I'm quite busy these days." As I walked away, I heard his boss ask, "That's your ex-wife, the one you said couldn't handle professional pressure. She just delivered the most impressive presentation we've seen all year." Tyler's abandonment was meant to be a punishment, a way to break my spirit and bend me to his will. He counted on my fear, my isolation, my dependence. He expected me to call, crying and desperate, begging him to rescue me. He never understood that what he saw as my weakness, my adaptability, my desire to maintain peace, my willingness to connect with others were actually strengths that would save me when he thought he was destroying me. Diana, Elena, and Jackson have become more than friends. They're my chosen family. Last weekend, we returned to Pinecrest for Diana's birthday, sitting by a campfire at the same site where Tyler had abandoned me. I realized how much I had changed. The flames that had once merely kept me from freezing now symbolized my rebirth. Yesterday, I received a text from Tyler. "I miss you. I was wrong. Please come home." 6 months ago, those words would have melted my resolve. Today, I recognized them for what they were: not an apology, but another attempt at control. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. Instead, I picked up my phone and texted the hiking group about this weekend's planned expedition. Then I turned to my easel, where a half-finished painting waited, a phoenix rising from campfire flames, its wings spread wide against a star-filled sky. Some might say being abandoned in the wilderness was the worst thing that ever happened to me. I say it was the beginning of finding my way home, not to a place or a person, but to myself. Tyler tried to break me by leaving me alone with my fears. He never understood that in the silence of his absence, I would finally hear my own voice again, strong, clear, and certain of its worth. He thought I was a plaything he could discard and retrieve at will. He was wrong. I was always the phoenix, waiting for the right moment to rise. And as I sign the lease on my own apartment next week, prepare for my gallery showing next month, and continue building relationships based on mutual respect rather than control, I realize that my revenge is complete. Not because Tyler suffers, though by all accounts. He does, but because I am finally, gloriously free. Tyler abandoned me in the wilderness, expecting me to crumble. Instead, I built a bonfire from the wreckage he left behind, one that illuminates my path forward and warms everyone who gathers in its light. That is my revenge, and it burns brighter every day.